Mike Donovan had spent 15 years saving for his dream home, and the backyard pool was the crowning jewel. It wasn't massive, just a modest in-ground pool with a small deck and privacy fence, but it represented everything he'd worked for. On summer evenings, he would float on his back, watching the stars appear one by one while the neighborhood sounds faded into the background splash of the filter. "This is what peace feels like," he often whispered to himself. That peace lasted exactly 23 days after he moved in. The doorbell rang on a scorching Saturday afternoon in July while Mike was grilling burgers, his first real weekend cookout since the move. He wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, he saw a woman with an aggressively geometric blonde haircut tapping her foot impatiently. She wore oversized sunglasses pushed up into her hair and clutched a phone in her manicured hand. "Can I help you?" Mike asked, opening the door just enough to speak through it. The woman's face brightened with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hi there. I'm Patricia Willoughby from 3 Doors Down. Welcome to Sycamore Lane." Mike returned the smile cautiously. "Thanks. I'm Mike. Nice to meet." "I noticed you have a pool," Patricia interrupted, her neck craning to see past him into the house. "The Hendersons who lived here before always let the neighborhood children use it during summer afternoons. Such a lovely community tradition." Mike blinked. "Bah, I wasn't aware of that arrangement." Patricia's smile tightened. "Oh, it wasn't an arrangement, just good neighbors being neighborly." She emphasized the word with air quotes. "My kids and their friends were just wondering when pool time would start. We usually came over around 1 o'clock on weekdays." "I'm sorry, but I'm not comfortable with that," Mike said, trying to sound polite but firm. "I don't even know anyone here yet, and there are liability issues with having other people's children swimming unsupervised." Patricia's face transformed so quickly that Mike almost took a step back. The smile vanished, replaced by narrowed eyes and a tight-lipped grimace. "Unsupervised? I would be here, of course," she said, her voice rising slightly. "Listen, this neighborhood has traditions, and that pool has always been available to the community. You can't just move in and change how things work." "Actually, I can," Mike said, his own patience beginning to wear thin. "It's my property." Patricia's nostrils flared. The HOA has rules about community spirit and neighborhood participation. "I've read the HOA guidelines thoroughly. There's nothing in there about mandatory pool sharing," Mike responded, wondering how this conversation had escalated so quickly. "Well, we'll just see about that." Patricia took a step back, her chin tilted upward. "I'm on the board, you know. Perhaps you should consider how important it is to start off on the right foot in a new community." As she stormed off, Mike closed the door and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. Through the kitchen window, he could see his burgers beginning to smoke on the grill. Perfect. Just perfect. The next morning, Mike woke to the sound of splashing. Rubbing his eyes, he walked to his bedroom window and froze in disbelief. Patricia and 3 children were in his backyard, the kids playing in his pool while Patricia lounged on one of his deck chairs, sipping from what appeared to be a mimosa. For several seconds, Mike stared, wondering if he was still dreaming. He wasn't. He threw on a t-shirt and shorts and charged downstairs, trying to collect his thoughts. Was this actually happening? Had this woman simply decided that his property was community property? As he burst through the back door, Patricia raised her glass in greeting. "Morning, neighbor. Beautiful day, isn't it? We let ourselves in through the side gate. Hope you don't mind. The kids have been dying for a swim." Mike stood there, speechless, as water splashed onto his deck and the children's laughter echoed off the fence. Something inside him shifted. This wasn't just an irritation. This was an invasion. And in that moment, as Patricia smugly sipped her drink, Mike Donovan decided that being the nice new neighbor was officially off the table. "You have exactly 2 minutes to get out of my pool and off my property," he said, his voice dangerously calm. The war had begun. Patricia's smile faltered at Mike's ultimatum. The children, sensing the tension, stopped splashing and watched the adults with wide eyes. "Excuse me?" Patricia's voice dropped an octave. "I don't think you understand how things work here." "No, I don't think you understand," Mike replied, crossing his arms. "This is private property. You're trespassing. Leave now, or I'm calling the police." Patricia placed her mimosa on the deck table with deliberate slowness. "Children," she called, her eyes never leaving Mike's face. "Time to go. Mr. Donovan here doesn't understand the concept of community." She stood gathering her designer beach bag. "This isn't over." After they left, Mike immediately called a locksmith to install a padlock on his gate and contacted a security company about installing cameras. That evening, he sent a formal email to the HOA board documenting the incident and stating clearly that no one had permission to use his pool. The response came within hours from Patricia herself, apparently the board secretary. "Mr. Donovan, the board has received your complaint. While private property rights are respected in our community, historical precedent and neighborhood goodwill are also highly valued. We'll discuss this at our next meeting, Tuesday, 7 p.m. Community Center, Your attendance is requested. Regards, Patricia Willoughby. Hellway Board Secretary. Tuesday evening found Mike sitting in an uncomfortable folding chair in the community center. The room was packed. News of the pool dispute had spread quickly. He recognized only a few faces from his limited interactions with neighbors. The board president, a retired judge named Walter Kemp, called the meeting to order. After standard business, he addressed the elephant in the room. Next item, pool access at 47 Sycamore Lane. Mrs. Willoughby has raised a concern about community access. Patricia stood armed with a folder. For 15 years, the Hendersons graciously allowed neighborhood children to swim in their pool during summer afternoons. It was an understood community benefit. Mr. Donovan's refusal represents a concerning change in neighborhood character. Several parents nodded in agreement. Mike felt a bead of sweat roll down his back as Patricia distributed photocopied pictures of smiling children in the pool from previous summers. When his turn came, Mike stood nervously. I sympathize with the disappointment, but there's no legal obligation for me to continue someone else's voluntary arrangement. More importantly, Mrs. Willoughby entered my property without permission after I explicitly denied access. That's trespassing. Walter Kemp cleared his throat. To be clear, there's nothing in our bylaws that compels residents to share private amenities. Patricia opened her mouth to object, but Walter raised his hand. However, Mr. Donovan, community goodwill is valuable. Perhaps a compromise? I'm open to ideas, Mike said cautiously, but unlimited access isn't possible. The meeting concluded with no resolution. As people filed out, a friendly-looking couple approached Mike. Hi, I'm David Chen, and this is my wife, Tara. We're across the street, the man said, extending his hand. We wanted to apologize for, well, this wasn't a great welcome to the neighborhood. Tara nodded emphatically. Patricia doesn't speak for everyone. She'd been pulling this kind of thing since she became board secretary 3 years ago. It's great to meet neighbors who don't expect pool privileges as a divine right, Mike said, relieved to find potential allies. David lowered his voice. Just a heads up, Patricia doesn't give up easily. The Hendersons moved partly because of her constant demands. First, it was pool access, then complaints about their holiday decorations, then their lawn maintenance. Thanks for the warning, Mike said grimly. The next day, Mike returned from work to find a stack of printed flyers on his porch. He picked one up and his stomach dropped. Neighborhood pool party. This Saturday, 1 to 5 p.m. 47 Sycamore Lane. Bring your own towels and refreshments. RSVP to Patricia Willoughby. His phone buzzed with text messages from unknown numbers. Neighbors RSVPing to a party he hadn't planned at his house and his pool. Just as Mike was contemplating his next move, his doorbell rang. It was David Chen, holding one of the flyers. Thought you should know? These are all over the neighborhood. Patricia's telling everyone you agree to host a community pool day as a compromise. Mike stared at the flyer, feeling the burn of anger transform into something else, determination. Patricia Willoughby had clearly underestimated what happened when you push a normally reasonable person too far. Thanks, David, Mike said, a strange calmness settling over him. I think I know exactly how to handle this. That night, Mike sat at his kitchen table with his laptop open, surrounded by notes and calculations. On his screen, how to make the world's largest gelatin dessert. He smiled as he added industrial quantities of gelatin to his online shopping cart, selecting next-day delivery. Patricia Willoughby won a pool party. Oh, he would give her a pool party they would never forget. Thursday morning brought a delivery truck to Mike's driveway. The confused driver glanced repeatedly between his clipboard and the mountain of boxes he'd unloaded. You sure about this order, sir? This is a lot of gelatin. Mike signed for the delivery with a satisfied smile. Absolutely certain. I'm having a very special pool party. After the truck departed, Mike's phone rang. It was his friend Alex, a chemical engineer who had helped with the calculations the night before. Did the shipment arrive? Alex asked. Just now. 600 pounds of unflavored gelatin, food-grade dyes, and everything else we need. You realize this is completely insane, right? Alex laughed. I did the math. It'll work, but I still can't believe you're doing this. Desperate times, desperate measures, Mike replied. You're still coming to help. Wouldn't miss it for the world. I'll be there in an hour with the equipment. While waiting, Mike reviewed their plan. His pool contained roughly 15,000 gallons of water. They would need to drain most of it, leaving just enough for the gelatin to dissolve properly. The temperature would be crucial, too hot and the proteins would denature, too cool, and they wouldn't dissolve completely. Then came the coloring, the cooling system to accelerate setting, and finally, the surprise factor. Alex arrived driving a rented van filled with industrial heating elements, portable generators, massive stainless steel drums, and several fans modified with cooling coils. You look like you're planning to cook meth, not gelatin, Mike observed. Breaking Bad, Jello edition, Alex quipped as they unloaded everything into Mike's garage. Let's get started. They spent Thursday draining the pool to the precise level and setting up the equipment. By nightfall, they had converted Mike's backyard into something between a mad scientist's laboratory and an industrial kitchen. The neighbors who peered over the fence were met with casual waves and vague explanations about pool maintenance. Friday morning, Operation Jello Pool began in earnest. They worked methodically, dissolving batch after batch of gelatin in the heated water, adding vibrant blue food coloring to match the usual pool water shade. The specialized circulation system they'd rigged ensured even distribution. Patricia's still advertising the pool party? Alex asked, stirring a massive vat of hot gelatin solution. Mike nodded, checking his phone. Just got 3 more RSVPs forwarded from neighbors. She's even added that there will be a special surprise. She has no idea how right she is. By mid-afternoon, they had successfully transformed the pool water into a massive gelatin solution. The cooling system came online, dropping the temperature gradually to prevent clouding. Mike had researched the process obsessively. The gelatin needed to set properly without separating or becoming too rigid. They wanted it firm enough to support weight briefly, but yielding enough for the full effect. Now we wait, Mike said, wiping sweat from his brow. It needs at least 12 hours to set completely. That evening, they admired their handiwork. From a distance, the pool looked normal. The blue coloring perfectly mimicked regular pool water. Only up close could you detect the slight shimmer and increased viscosity that betrayed its true nature. They'd even added a thin layer of regular water on top to enhance the illusion. It's beautiful, Alex said, snapping photos. Diabolical but beautiful. Mike spent that night hardly sleeping, equal parts anxious and excited. Around dawn, he crept outside to check on their creation. The gelatin had set perfectly, a giant wobbling blue mass that looked remarkably like water until disturbed. He sent a quick text to Alex. It worked. Pool is Jello. Operation Karen Comeuppance is go. Saturday morning arrived bright and sunny, perfect pool party weather. Mike strategically closed all his blinds and made his house appear empty, parking his car at David and Tara's place across the street. From their front window, he had a perfect view of his own property. By 12:30 p.m., Patricia arrived with decorations and a cooler. She tried the front door first, then walked around to the side gate. Finding it locked, she produced a key. Somehow she had copied his lock and let herself in. Mike was outraged but remained in position. This was evidence he could use later. At 12:55, the first families began arriving, beach towels and pool floats in hand. Patricia greeted them in Mike's backyard as if she owned the place. By 1:15, nearly 20 people had gathered around the pool, with more arriving. Mike and David watched from across the street as Patricia tapped a plastic cup with a spoon, gathering everyone's attention. Even from a distance, they could see her gesturing grandly toward the pool. She appeared to be giving a speech about community victory and proper neighborhood values. Then, with a flourish, she invited the children to be the first to jump in. Here we go, Mike whispered, lifting his phone to record. Across the street, 3 excited children ran toward the pool and launched themselves into the air for a synchronized cannonball. What happened next would become neighborhood legend. 3 children sailed through the air in perfect cannonball formation, arms wrapped around knees, faces bright with anticipation. Their bodies hit the surface with a sound unlike anything the gathered neighbors had ever heard, not the familiar splash of water, but a thick, gelatinous thwomp. For one surreal moment, they seemed to hover on the surface of the blue expanse. Then slowly they began to sink into the jiggling mass. The crowd froze in collective confusion. The children's expressions transformed from joy to bewilderment as they found themselves partially submerged in firm, wobbling jello. What the? One boy tried to swim but found his movements oddly restricted, his arms pushing through the gelatin with visible effort. It's jello. The declaration broke the spell. Children who had been lining up for their turn rushed forward to see the phenomenon, parents following close behind. Exclamations of disbelief echoed across the backyard. The whole pool is jello. How is this possible? Can I touch it? The initial 3 children weren't distressed. They were laughing hysterically, trying to swim through the wobbly substance, finding their bodies supported in ways that defied their understanding of pools. More brave youngsters joined them, discovering they could walk somewhat across the surface before sinking to knee level, creating a scene reminiscent of people walking on the moon. Only Patricia remained frozen, her mimosa halfway to her lips, face cycling through expressions, confusion, disbelief, and finally, as understanding dawned, pure rage. Where is he? She hissed, scanning the yard. Donovan? Across the street, Mike and David were doubled over with laughter, watching through the window as children bounced on the surface of the jello pool while Patricia's face turned an alarming shade of crimson. I think that's our cue, Mike said, composing himself. Time for the grand entrance. They crossed the street, Mike recording video the entire time. As they entered through the front door and emerged into the backyard, a strange scene greeted them. What had started as shock had transformed into something unexpected: delight. Children were treating the Jello pool like the world's largest bouncy castle, laughing uncontrollably as they tried to navigate the gelatinous surface. Parents were dipping their hands in, marveling at the texture, taking photos and videos. Only Patricia stood apart, trembling with fury. "What have you done?" she shrieked when she spotted Mike. The backyard fell silent, all eyes turning toward the confrontation. Mike smiled pleasantly. "I prepared for the pool party you organized at my house without my permission," he replied loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I believe you advertised a special surprise. A surprise." Patricia stormed toward him, her designer sandals clicking on the concrete. "You've ruined everything. This is vandalism." "Vandalism?" Mike raised an eyebrow. "Of my own pool? That's an interesting legal theory, Patricia. You did this on purpose to humiliate me." "Actually," Mike corrected, his voice remaining calm, "I did this because you repeatedly trespassed on my property after being explicitly told not to, copied my lock without permission, which I have on video, by the way, and organized an event at my home without my consent." He gestured to the pool, where children continued to play, their laughter forming a bizarre soundtrack to the confrontation. The children seemed to be enjoying it. "I call that a successful party." An unexpected voice joined the conversation. "He's right, Patricia. It was Walter Kemp, the HOA president, holding a plastic cup of Jello he'd scooped from the pool. You had no right to organize this without his permission. And to be honest, this is the most entertaining neighborhood event we've had in years." Patricia looked around, suddenly realizing she was without allies. Parents were smiling, children were having the time of their lives, and even other HOA board members were dipping their fingers into the massive Jello creation with childlike wonder. "This isn't over," she said to Mike, her voice low. "You've made an enemy today." "No, Patricia," Mike replied quietly. "You made an enemy when you decided my property rights didn't matter." As Patricia grabbed her designer beach bag and stormed out through the side gate, something remarkable happened. Spontaneous applause broke out among the neighbors. Several people approached Mike, introducing themselves properly for the first time. "I've wanted to stand up to her for years," one woman confided. "The way she runs the neighborhood like her personal kingdom. This is the best thing I've ever seen." "How did you even do this?" asked another neighbor, a physics teacher from the local high school. "The volume calculations alone must have been staggering." As Mike began explaining the process, a little girl tugged at his shirt. "Mr. Donovan, can we keep playing your Jello? It's the coolest thing ever." Looking at her hopeful face, then at the joyful scene his revenge had created, Mike felt something shift. This wasn't the neighborhood welcome he had expected, but somehow it felt right. "Of course you can," he told her. "And you know what? Let's make this an annual tradition. The real Sycamore Lane pool party." The cheer that went up was deafening. Parents who had arrived as Patricia's supporters were now shaking Mike's hand, exchanging phone numbers, offering to help clean up afterward. In the most unexpected twist of all, Mike's act of revenge had transformed him from neighborhood outcast to local legend in the span of an afternoon. Alex sidled up beside him, watching the impromptu Jello pool party with satisfaction. "Not exactly what we planned, huh? You're a hero now." Mike grinned. "I just wanted to teach her a lesson. I didn't expect this." "Sometimes the best revenge isn't making someone miserable," Alex observed. "It's finding joy in spite of them." As the afternoon wore on, the story of the Jello pool spread beyond the neighborhood. People from blocks away began arriving, drawn by text messages and social media posts. Someone brought speakers and set up music. Another neighbor arrived with trays of food. The unauthorized pool party had transformed into a genuine community celebration, one where Mike was welcome as the guest of honor rather than an unwilling host. By sunset, as children with blue-stained swimsuits were reluctantly dragged home by their parents, Mike realized something extraordinary. In trying to reclaim his privacy, he had accidentally found his community, and it tasted suspiciously like blue raspberry Jello. The Great Jello Pool incident, as it came to be known, transformed life on Sycamore Lane in ways Mike never anticipated. The massive cleanup took 3 days, with neighbors volunteering to help scoop, drain, and scrub away the last traces of blue gelatin. Each volunteer left with containers of Jello as souvenirs, and for weeks afterward, blue desserts appeared at every neighborhood gathering. Mike's security camera footage of Patricia unlocking his gate without permission went viral after David's teenage son uploaded it to TikTok. The video, captioned "Local Karen Gets Served, Jello," racked up millions of views within days. National morning shows called requesting interviews, which Mike politely declined. He hadn't wanted fame, just to be left alone. The HOA held an emergency meeting the following Tuesday. Walter Kemp called the room to order with a slight smile that betrayed his amusement before adopting a more serious expression. First item, the unauthorized party at 47 Sycamore Lane and subsequent pool situation. A ripple of suppressed laughter moved through the room. Mrs. Willoughby, would you like to address the board? Patricia stood, jaw set, and shoulders rigid. She had prepared a 3-page statement about malicious neighborhood disruption and hazardous food substances, but the crowd's barely concealed grins clearly rattled her. This was a calculated attempt to humiliate me and endanger children, she began. The children seem to be having the time of their lives, interjected Mrs. Garcia from the end of the table. My grandson has asked 3 times when the pool will be Jello again. That's not the point, Patricia snapped, Mr. Donovan deliberately. Mrs. Willoughby, Walter interrupted, before you continue, I should inform you that the board has reviewed Mr. Donovan's security footage showing you using an unauthorized key to access his property after being explicitly told not to. That's trespassing, potentially breaking and entering. Patricia's face paled. I was acting in the community interest. The board disagrees, Walter continued. We voted to request your resignation as secretary, effective immediately. The room fell silent. For 3 years, Patricia had ruled the HOA with an iron fist, using her position to monitor and meddle in neighbors' lives. Nobody had expected her reign to end with blue Jello. You can't do this, she whispered. It's already done, Walter replied. 6-1 vote. Your replacement will be elected next month. Until then, Tara Chen will serve as interim secretary. Patricia gathered her papers with shaking hands and left without another word. As the door closed behind her, spontaneous applause broke out. The consequences extended beyond Patricia's HOA position. The next day, Mike returned home to find a formal letter of apology in his mailbox, signed by Patricia's husband, along with a check covering the estimated cost of the pool cleaning. Neighborhood gossip suggested that after seeing the viral video, Mr. Willoughby had finally put his foot down regarding his wife's behavior. Meanwhile, Mike found himself the unexpected recipient of neighborhood goodwill. Invitations to barbecues and dinner parties piled up. Children waved to him on his morning runs. An elderly couple 2 doors down brought him homemade cookies with a note thanking him for finally putting that woman in her place. Most surprisingly, genuine friendships began to form. The Chens became regular dinner guests. Walter Kemp, a retired judge with a dry wit, invited Mike to join his weekend golf group. Mrs. Garcia from the end of the street, whose grandson had so enjoyed the Jello pool, turned out to be a retired chemical engineer who was fascinated by the technical aspects of Mike's prank. 3 weeks after the incident, Mike hosted his first official pool party, with regular water this time. He'd installed a proper gate with a combination lock and sent the code only to those he'd invited. The gathering was smaller than the Jello extravaganza, but filled with people he now considered friends rather than just neighbors. To new beginnings, David toasted, raising his glass as the sun began to set, and to the man who united Sycamore Lane with 600 pounds of gelatin. Laughter rippled around the pool deck. Mike felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the summer evening. A sense of belonging he hadn't expected to find in this place. As guests chatted around him, Mike noticed a moving truck parked outside Patricia's house. David followed his gaze and nodded. They listed the house last week. Rumor has it they're moving to a condo downtown, no HOA. I almost feel bad, Mike admitted. David shook his head. Don't. She's been making life miserable here for years. Before you, she targeted the Hendersons, and before them, the Blackwells. Some people just need to control everything around them. Still, I never meant to drive them out of the neighborhood. Actions have consequences. Tara joined in. Besides, our property values might actually go up without her constant complaints and drama. As twilight deepened, children played Marco Polo in the pool, regular water splashing and catching the golden light of sunset. Adults lounged in deck chairs, conversations flowing as easily as the drinks. Mike found himself in a heated but friendly debate about baseball with Walter and 2 other neighbors. It struck him suddenly how different this was from the lonely backyard floating he'd imagined when buying the house. He'd wanted peace and privacy, and he still valued both, but there was something to be said for community too. The right kind of community.